Good morning, students. Very good morning. Today we are going to discussing about the synapse. Today class we are going to discussing about the synapse. What is the today class? Synapse. What is the class indicate? You know, synapse. Synapse. Today we are going to discussing about the synapse. Synapse means junction. Synapse means junction. Synapse means junction. Synapse means junction. This junction join with the communication between the one neuron to other neurons. How the neurons are one neuron, how the neurons communicate, one neurons communicate to the other neurons with the help of synapse, with the help of junction, with the help of junction. The information also pass, the impulse also travel from the one neuron to other neuron with the help of junction. This junction is nothing but synapse. Junction is nothing but synapse. The synapses are two types. Synapses are two types. Synapses are two types. First synapse, chemical synapse. Chemical synapse. Chemical synapse. Chemical synapse. Second synapse, electrical synapse. Electrical synapse. Electrical synapse. With the help of chemicals, one neuron communicated with the other neurons. With the help of electrical signals, with the help of electrical impulse, they will connection with the help of gap junctions, with the help of proteins. They will connection. They are communicate with one synapse to the other, one junction, one neuron to the other neuron. The main purpose of the synapse is a communication between the two neurons. It is a communication between the two neurons. Chemical synapse. This chemical synapse means with the help of neurotransmitters. One neuron communicate with the other neurons. One neuron of the message sent to the other neurons. Travel to the one neuron to the other neuron. Electrical synapse means the message, it is travel with the help of gap junctions. If you observe the chemical synapse, the synapse means gap junction. If you observe the chemical synapse, it is the axon terminal or synaptic node. Nothing but axon terminal, or also known as a synaptic node. Synaptic node. It is the one neuron. Other neuron of the dendrite. Is the other neuron of the dendrites. Other neuron of the dendrites. It is the one neuron of the axon terminal or synaptic node. It is the other neuron. It is the one neuron. It is the second neuron. Both neurons are communicated with the help of chemicals. With the help of chemicals. both neurons, it is one neuron, it is other neuron. How they will communicate it? With the help of chemicals. With the help of chemicals. Chemicals means neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitter. With the help of neurotransmitter, one neuron communicate with the other neurons. This neuron releases to the neurotransmitters like acetylcholine chemicals and dopamine, serotonin, glycine, different types of neurotransmitters. This neurotransmitter, they will send message to the one neuron to the other neuron. It is a one neuron. It is the second neuron. With the help of these chemicals, they will send the message to the one neuron to the other neuron. This junction, the junction between the one neuron to the other neuron, it is known as synapse. Synapse means it is the junction, one neuron to the other neuron. The gap, the junction, it is between the one neuron to the other neuron. It is nothing but synapse. Synapse means junction. The junction between the one neuron to the other neuron. The junction is consist of chemicals. These chemicals, they will send message to the one neuron to the other neuron. They will communicate it. They are communicated one neuron to the other neuron with the help of chemicals. Electrical synapse. It is the axon terminal or synaptic lobe. Axon terminal or synaptic lobe. Axon terminal or also known as a synaptic lobe. Axon terminal or synaptic lobe. It is other neuron dendrite. It is the one neuron. It is a second neuron. It is a one neuron. It is a second neuron. How they will? With the help of gap junctions. With the help of gap junctions. These gap junctions, how these two neurons are communicated? These neurons, they will travel the message to the other neurons with the help of gap junctions. Gap junctions means they releases to the electrical ions. Ions means sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium. These all ions they present in the gap junctions. With the help of this gap, once the ions are moving into the one neuron to the other neurons, means the information, the communication easily pass into the one neuron to the other neurons. This electrical synapse is very fast synapse. It is the very fast synapse. The information is passed into the one neuron to the other neurons. The information is very fast from the one neuron to the other neurons. But the chemical synapse is slow process. Whenever this neuron releases to the chemicals, these chemicals bind with other neurons of the dendrites. Again, they will communicate. This process is very slow process, but this process is very fast process. According to in our textbook, they are given chemical synapse. Coming to the, we are explained in the detailed manner. We are going to explain in the detailed manner of the synapse. Which synapse? Chemical synapse. What is the synapse? Chemical synapse. According to in our textbook, according to NCRT textbook, they are given chemical synapse. What is given? Chemical synapse. What is given? Chemical synapse. Synapse means junction. Chemical means the chemicals, they are responsible for they are communicated. They will send message to the one neuron to the other neurons. How the neurons are communicated with the one neuron to the other neurons. How the neurons are communicated with the one neuron to the other neurons. The main reason is with the help of chemicals. they will send message. They will communicate it with the help of one neuron to the other neurons. One neuron to the other neurons. Coming to the, according to in our textbook, they are given chemical synapse. They indicate chemical synapse. Coming to the diagram. Coming to the diagram, they indicate. See here, is the axon. Is the axon. Next one, they indicate. Next one, they indicate. Is the indicator axon. Is the indicator axon terminals, myelin sheath, axon terminal. Is indicator axon terminal. Is indicator synaptic knob. What is indicator? Synaptic knob. Synaptic knob. Synaptic knob. This is the indicate. See here. It is the dendrite of the other neuron. Dendrite of the other neuron. Dendrite of the other neuron. This membrane, it is known as, post synaptic membrane. Post synaptic membrane. Post synaptic membrane. This membrane is known as presynaptic membrane. This membrane, it is known as a presynaptic membrane. It is known as a presynaptic membrane. Presynaptic membrane. Third one, postsynaptic membrane. Between the gap, see here, between the presynaptic membrane and postsynaptic membrane. Presynaptic membrane, postsynaptic membrane. This gap, the gap, it is known as synaptic cleft. What is a gap? Synaptic cleft. Cleft means gap or junction. Gap. The gap is located between the presynaptic membrane and postsynaptic membrane. This postsynaptic membrane, see here, the postsynaptic membrane is consists of receptors. The postsynaptic membrane consists of receptors. Please indicate receptors. Postsynaptic membrane consists of receptor. If you observe the synaptic node or synaptic knob, the synaptic knob consists of synaptic vesicles. Synaptic knob consists of synaptic vesicles. Synaptic knob consists of synaptic vesicles. Synaptic knob filled with synaptic vesicles. Synaptic vesicles. Synaptic knob filled with synaptic vesicles. Synaptic knob filled with, synaptic knob contains synaptic vesicles. These synaptic vesicles are filled with. 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 These synaptic vesicles are filled with neurotransmitter chemicals. Synaptic vesicles are filled with synaptic Vesicles are filled with chemicals. Filled with chemicals. These chemicals are nothing but neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters. These chemicals are nothing but neurotransmitters. Coming to the next one. If you observe the synaptic that synaptic membrane, this synaptic membrane, it is consists of calcium channels. What is the channels? Calcium channels. What is the channels? Calcium channels. The number of calcium channels. They indicate calcium channels. The number of calcium channels are present. This indicate extracellular fluid. It is indicate extra. It is a single cell. It is the nerve cell. Outside the fluid, extracellular fluid. It is the intracellular fluid. It is intracellular fluid. It is extracellular fluid. Once the axon terminal receive signals. The axon terminal receive the signal from the central nervous system, from the spinal cord. Once this axon terminal receive the signals, the signals arrive end of the axon terminal. This impulse pass into the calcium channels. Once the calcium channels receive signal from the axon terminal, these calcium channels are open. Whenever the calcium channels are open, the calcium ions move into the outside to the inside. More calcium ions enter into the calcium ions enter into the inside the intracellular fluid. These calcium ions bind with, contact with, join with the synaptic vesicles. Whenever the calcium ions contact with the synaptic vesicles, the synaptic vesicles are movement into the synaptic vesicles are contact with the synaptic vesicles are contact with presynaptic membrane. Whenever the calcium ions contact with the synaptic vesicles, they are helpful for the calcium channels are helpful for these synaptic vesicles are fused into the presynaptic membrane. These calcium ion channels, these calcium ions, they are helpful for this these synaptic vesicles fuse into the presynaptic membrane. These synaptic vesicles are fused into the presynaptic membrane. Whenever these synaptic vesicles are fused into this synaptic membrane, they will rupture. This presynaptic membrane, these synaptic vesicles are ruptured. Whenever the synaptic vesicles are ruptured, whenever the synaptic vesicles fuse into the presynaptic membrane, the synaptic vesicles are ruptured. The synaptic vesicles are released to the neurotransmitter chemicals. neurotransmitter chemicals. These presynaptic vesicles fuse into the, these synaptic vesicles fuse into the presynaptic membrane. These synaptic vesicles are ruptured. Whenever the presynaptic membrane is ruptured, the synaptic vesicles are ruptured, they release to the acetylcholine chemicals. Whenever the acetylcholine chemicals are released into the synaptic cleft, synaptic cleft, whenever the synaptic cleft is consists of the synaptic gap, this consists of neurotransmitter. This neurotransmitter bind with, the neurotransmitters are bind with postsynaptic membrane. The postsynaptic membrane, the postsynaptic membrane is consists of receptors, acetylcholine receptors, the different types of receptors, particular receptors. These chemicals, the chemicals bind with neurotransmitter receptor. Whenever these acetylcholine chemicals bind with receptor, the signals are passed into the other neurons. The signals are passed into these neurons to the other neurons. For example, this neuron, presynaptic membrane, synaptic cleft, and postsynaptic membrane is known as a synapse. Presynaptic membrane, the communication between the presynaptic membrane and postsynaptic membrane, presynaptic membrane and synaptic cleft, and the communication synaptic cleft to the postsynaptic membrane, synaptic cleft, this entire region is known as a synapse. Synapse means junction. Synapse means the communication between the one neuron to the other neuron. It is one neuron, it is the other neuron. How they will communicate with the help of chemicals. What is the first membrane? Presynaptic membrane. Second one, synaptic cleft. It consists of neurotransmitter. What is the third one? It is nothing but postsynaptic membrane. Once the signals arrival from the, see here, it is the axon terminal. Axon terminal means the signals, the first receive dendrites. The dendrites they will send into the cell body to the axon. This axon, the signals arrival to the end of the axon terminal. Whenever the signals arrival to the axon terminal, these calcium channels are open. Whenever the calcium channels are open, the calcium ions move into the outside to the inside the nerve cell. Whenever the calcium ions move to the inside the cell, this synaptic knob is filled with synaptic vesicles. Whenever the synaptic vesicles are filled, these synaptic vesicles are fused into the calcium ions. The calcium ions is helpful for the movement of the synaptic vesicles. These synaptic vesicles are fused into the presynaptic membrane. The synaptic vesicles are fused into the presynaptic membrane. Whenever the synaptic vesicles are fused into the presynaptic membrane, the synaptic vesicles are ruptured or damaged. Whenever the synaptic vesicles are ruptured, they release to the neurotransmitter chemicals. These neurotransmitter chemicals, they enter into the synaptic cleft. Cleft means gap. Whenever this neurotransmitter chemicals, they will bind with postsynaptic membrane. These neurotransmitter chemicals bind with the postsynaptic membrane. The postsynaptic membrane is consists of receptors. The particular receptor, these receptors are bind with the neurotransmitter. Whenever this receptor bind with the neurotransmitter chemicals, the signals pass into the other neurons. Other neurons. How the neurons are communicated with the one neuron to the other neurons. How the communication between the one neuron to the other neuron? With the help of synapse, with the help of junction, with the help of chemicals, with the help of electrical signals. With the help of electrical signals. It is the according to the chemical synapse. According to the chemical synapse. Chemical synapse means what is a junction? What is a junction? Presynaptic membrane. It is the one neuron of the axon terminal. This neuron releases to the acetyl chemicals. These chemicals they enter into the synaptic cleft. These chemicals again they will pass into the postsynaptic membrane of the receptors. They will receive the message from the other neurons. How the neurons communicated between the one neuron to the other neurons? With the help of synapse, with the help of junctions. With the help of junctions. What is the meaning of synapse? The junction between the two neurons is known as synapse. Thank you very much.